In this video, we will learn about async await and what that means for our Vapor application. Let's get started. Hey everyone, my name is Michaela Karen. I am a full-time iOS developer and freelancer. Let's learn how to use async await, Swift's new concurrency syntax, within our Vapor application. The first thing we should talk about is what is async await. So if we go to this site right here, it is GitHub and is called Swift Evolution. These are the documents for how the Swift language is evolving because it is an open source language. So if we go to this website, which will be in the description below, we can see what is async await. So we can see information about the proposal and that it's now implemented in Swift 5.5. and pretty much how all the decisions came about for this language feature itself. Async await has to do with writing asynchronous code. So right now in the Swift language, we can use closures and completion handlers, but they can be hard to use and they're kind of very confusing at the beginning. So what async await tries to do is make them easier to understand, to write, and then also to read. So you can go through this and see all the different information about why they chose to add async await to Swift. And then there are four or five different problems of how they describe the reason for it. So the first one you can see is called the pyramid of doom of here's a closure, here's one more, here's another, here's another, here's another, and then we finally get to the result itself. So that's the motivation behind async await. You can see the playlist by Stuart Lynch all about Swift concurrency features, and then also lesson 4 specifically is about async await. The Vapor documentation also has information about migrating your code from event loop futures, which is what is in our code now, to the async await syntax. So if you go to the Vapor docs, and then along the side you click on basics, and then click on async, there's async await, and a little bit lower you see migrating to async await. So we'll go through how we do this, but here's a little example of what it looks like, the difference in the syntax. So we are accomplishing the same thing, we're just kind of writing it in a different way, and hopefully it's a way that's more understandable for everybody. So right here, this is just a function to get a first user. You can see returns an event loop future that is a string, so we have user.query, so we are querying our database. We are unwrapping it and then also throwing an abort not found if for some reason we couldn't find this. And then we are flat mapping it to a user. We're changing a property and then we return update and then also map that and return a username. So this looks very confusing and it's kind of hard to follow and read. But when we use async await, you can see it's marked as async throws. We are first getting a user, so we are awaiting. To get a new user from the request, we get the first one, else, so we have a whole guard statement. Else, we are deciding to throw a not found error. So this makes a lot more sense than seeing this first part here. Even though we're accomplishing the same thing, it is easier to read. Here we're doing the same thing of changing that one property, and then we are awaiting the update, and then return user.name, as opposed to needing to add another closure here. So that's the basics and the difference in the syntax, and then let's get started using it within our project. The first thing we need to do to convert our code to the async await syntax is we need to update Vapor, because we need to update and make sure that our Vapor version is up to date with all the new changes when they integrated async await into Vapor. Because previously, when we first began this series, the async await syntax was integrated into the Swift language itself, which is how we could use it with the iOS app, but the Vapor package for server-side Swift, that had not yet integrated async await, so that's why we didn't use it at the very beginning. So now when we use it, we need to upgrade Vapor. So to do that, we can type brew upgrade Vapor. This will upgrade Vapor, the package, the homebrew package on our computer, but you could also type view brew update and brew upgrade. So this would update homebrew, so the actual package installation that we have, which is, it would update this package manager itself, and this side will go ahead and update homebrew all of the different packages that we have. So if you didn't care about all the different packages that were on your computer, you could update all of them at the same time if you wanted to, but sometimes that's not a good idea depending on what you're working on, so you could just do brew upgrade Vapor. And I've already done this on my computer, so it's probably just going to say upgrade. Yeah, it says 18.5.1 at the time of this recording is already installed, and you can see I have something else on my computer that's out of date. After we have updated Vapor with Homebrew, now we need to update our code. So I don't have it on my computer yet, so we are just going to go ahead and clone it. So I am using the GitHub CLI, but a majority of people probably use just git clone and copy this URL. But I use the GitHub CLI just because I like it. So let's cd onto the desktop. I will just paste in gh repo clone, but most people will say git clone and then this URL. But because I'm using the CLI, that's my command is a little bit different. Okay, let's go and cd into the project. So we type cd YT Vapor. So I have example because I was testing everything beforehand. So we just go to YT Vapor and you see we cloned lesson 1 because I made lesson 1 the default because when somebody starts out with a series, that's what they would use. But this is broken down into lesson 1, 2, 4, and then main. And I believe main is 5 because we couldn't name it lesson 5 because of how Heroku deploys. So we actually want the branch main because lesson 1 doesn't have all of the code, but main does. So we just type git checkout main. And you can see it says we are tracking origin main and we have switched to the main branch. On my computer, you can see it says git main, but if you would to type git branch, you'd see a list of your branches and a star by the one that you're on. So once we do that, we can open our package.swift. So we type open package.swift and open on my other computer or my other screen. So we have opened the project and you can see at the top it's loading. So now it's loading all of our packages in. Now that we have cloned the project and open it, the first thing we're going to do is because this is a project that I don't have on my computer yet, let's edit the scheme and set the working directory. So we go to edit scheme, go to options, check use custom working directory. So let's choose our project, which is the Vapor API. The example was the previous one I was working on, so this is the actual one that we are working on now. Click choose and then click close. So we've set that mainly so we don't have a warning that shows up. So let's run our API, but we will probably get an error because we have not opened the database yet with Docker. And the first thing we do get is an error connection refused. That is because we have not started the database. So let's open a new tab. So if I type Command T, that opens a new tab. And we type Docker compose up DB. So that is the database starting. So let's stop Xcode, run this. So that will start our database for us. It says ready to accept connections, good. And now let's run this. And there we go. It says server starting 127.0.0 and 8080. So if we open Postman here, we can go to that URL, which is our local host, do the /songs endpoint and hit send. And we get back an empty array because there's nothing in the database yet. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to upgrade everything so that we're using the new syntax. So we can get that out of the way. We can stop the project. And the first thing we're going to do is upgrade to SwiftTools 5.6. So this is a comment, but it is still read by the Swift Package Manager for how everything is set up here. So I was kind of confused about that, but even though it is a comment, it is still read by the package manager. So that's why we have to change the version that we're using. Because as we saw in the proposal, async await was released in Swift 5.5, but now at the current moment, we are using Swift 5.6. So that's why we are specifying the version here, even though it isn't a comment. We need to be on macOS 12, and then we get this error because we haven't saved it and updated anything yet. So we have 5.6, we have 12, and then we have to go down here and change this line. Instead of it saying target run dependencies, this should say executable target. Like that. And once we do that and save it, it kind of tries to resolve everything, but it's still struggling. And that is because we need to actually upgrade all of these packages. We could update them individually if there was, for some reason, you needed to update some but not others, but in this project, it's okay to update everything. So if we go to File, Packages, Update to latest package versions, we see the loading bar going and updating everything. So let's wait for that to finish. Okay, there we go. It looks like everything is updated, and we can see our package.resolve has changed because a lot of these like revision numbers and version numbers have changed, and pretty much it looks like all of it has changed because we've updated everything. So now if we click Command B, we can build the project and check that everything still compiles. And there we go, we have a build succeeded, which is good. So that was upgrading Vapor within our project itself. Now we need to change our code to use the new syntax. So let's open Sources, App, and then Controllers. So we'll need to upgrade the song controller, and then we have the migrations. Let's update the song controller first. So what we are going to do is change the syntax from the event loop future to using async await. So the first thing we have to do is mark the function as async, and then get rid of the event loop future completely, but we are still returning an array of songs because when we hit this endpoint to get all of the songs, we still want to return an array of everything, but now we have to change this, in which it almost looks the same, but we'll change the syntax. Try await, because this function can throw, and we can see that with the throws. Try await song.query on database, so we do request.db, and we are getting all. So it's still, this almost still looks the same. The only difference is that we are using now an async await function as opposed to an event loop future function. And in a lot of our examples for this application, the benefits of async await, like you kind of can't tell because we're using such a simple example. But when you start making everything that's more complex and you may do multiple database calls within a single endpoint, that's when you'll really see the benefits of using async await. So this one was the first one, and we can include the return keyword if we wanted to, but we don't have to because this function only has one line in it. So that is this one, and we can confirm it still works by running the project. Tapping OK, our server has started. And then if we hit send, we still are getting back that empty array. So let's stop it. Let's add a create. So for the create function, the first line of it is still going to look the same. So actually, I'll keep these so you can see the difference. And let's go back and copy that line, but we'll comment it out. So you can see this one, it literally looks the exact same, except now we are using the async await version rather than the event loop future version. But the syntax is still the same, and they did that on purpose. And then this one, for posting a new update, this part still looks the same because we are taking our request and decoding it into a song, and that's going to happen no matter what. But the actual act of creating the new song, that will change to the async await syntax. So let's again get rid of the event loop future, change that to async, and type try await song.save. So you see there's the event loop future one and then the async one, but we are using async await. We do our request.db, and then return.ok. So you can see in the new syntax, we're doing the same thing here for saving the song to our database, but we don't have to add this .transform. We are just waiting for this to finish, so waiting for the server to perform that work, and then once that is done, we are then returning .ok, which is an HTTP status. So it's running linearly. Now that we have changed the syntax here, for return OK, let's try both of these functions together. So if we run the application again, click OK. Okay, we are started. So if we send a request for get, we still get back an empty array. If we now send a new request for creating a song, we are creating a song with the JSON that just has a title and the title we're giving it is money. And you go to body raw JSON like we did within the last couple videos. And we change this to make sure it's a post request. So I already have all 4 of them up here, but you may need to create a new tab. So we hit send and it says 200 OK back because that's what we are returning back if it was successful. So that was good. So if we go to get, we should be able to send a new request. And now we have our new song called Money. So we can do a different one. Let's do, have I still been listening to the same band? I think I have. Okay, so let's type a new song. And this one will be Kill This Love because I've still been listening to the same band. We send the post request. We got back a 200. We go back to the get, send that again. And now we have 2 of our songs because it's an array of song objects. So we are good. So we know our get songs and we know the create songs work. So the last 2 to update are update and delete. So with update, let's comment this one out. And again, we still need this line because it still works the same if we are getting a song from the iOS app, and then we have to decode it. Once we decode the song, we have to get it from the database. So to do that, let's do guard, let's call it song from DB. And that is equal to try await song.find, and we are using the async one, and it's not coming up because we should change this to async, and we again want to return an HTTP status. So now when we type song.find, it suggests the async one above the event loop future one. And the ID of this is our song.id and request.db. So that is equivalent to what we are doing here. And then else, throw abort not found. So that's what these 2 lines are doing. And once we have the song, we want to change the property. So let's do song.db.title is equal to song.title. So that is what this line is doing. Let's update it. So we have to do try await song from db.update. We're using the async one, and update request.db. So this is the actual act of updating the database. And if all that goes well, we are returning 200. So we return .ok. So that is similar to what this line was doing, was return, update, and then transform that into OK. But with async await, we don't have to do that because if this were to fail, it would automatically throw some kind of error for us. So that is the update syntax. And then lastly, we have the delete syntax. So let's comment this one out. And we have to do the same thing. We have to find the song, and then once we find it, we delete it. So let's do guardlet song is equal to song.find. And it didn't come up with async await because I forgot to change that again. So we are getting rid of the event loop future and changing it to async. So we do song.find, and then now we have the async one coming up. And then we do the same thing. We're finding request.parameters, .get, and we are using song ID, and we are finding it in our database. And in the case that we don't find it, we are throwing abort not found, which is more self-explanatory than like unwrap. And once we have found it, now we want to delete the song. Oops, delete request.db and then return .ok. So again, we are finding the song. If we can't find the song, we are throwing a not found error. We are trying to delete the song from the database. If this were to fail, it would throw some kind of error. Otherwise, we keep going and we would just return OK. So let's test all of this together now. So let's go up and run the project. And we have an error. Oh, because I didn't mark these as try. Oh, we need try and await, actually. My bad. Try, await. Try, await. Because with async await, that's the other half is the await, is async is our function is asynchronous, and then await is how we are waiting for code to finish. So we are waiting for this to finish, and it's an asynchronous function, or it has asynchronous functionalities. So now if we run it, we should be good. And let's go back to Postman. So if we send our GET request, we have our 2 songs. We've already tested the create work, so let's test the update. So let's update money. So let's copy the ID. Or actually, we need the whole object. So let's copy this whole object here. Go into here. That was me testing everything. So let's paste this object. Oh, I don't know why. All the tabs are messed up. But we need the ID because that's the ID of the property that we're on. And then let's change the title from Money to Lalisa because that is the other single that she released. And this is a put function and then the same endpoint. And then we hit send and we got back 200 okay. So that means it worked. Otherwise, we would have gotten back an error right here. So now if we go back to the GET request, we can see money was this 9671. So if we hit send again, so we've killed this love, but the 967 ID, the title has changed to Lalisa. So we know our update functionality is working as well. So now if we want to test the delete, let's delete kill this love. So if we copy the ID here, we go into our delete function. So you just change this to delete and we don't need a body for this one. And we just add the ID to the end of the URL. We hit send. We got back 200 okay, which means it was good. But if we also use our GET request and we send this one, we only have 1 song that is coming back to us now. So now we know all 4 of the endpoints that we created are working. Yeah, so we have changed all 4 endpoints for create, read, update, and delete for the Vapor application, but we can also change the migrations to use async await. So if we go to create songs, we can stop the project. These also have event loop futures, so we don't actually need to change these ones unless we really want to. You can make it so that all the migrations you make going forward use async await, but all the ones that you've previously written, you can keep them in the syntax with event loop future. So if we were to change these, we use async migration. And if we were to hold command and click on this and jump to definition, we can see async migration actually inherits from migration, which is what we just changed. So we don't have to change anything else. We only need to change what it inherits for part of this. I mean, when I meant we don't have to change anything, we don't have to change anything in our configure file for this line here. So if we added new migrations here, so if we were to do app.migrations.add and we added a new migration, we can use async migration because async migration inherits from migration, and this function takes in a migration. So we wouldn't have to change anything in this line within the configure function. But how we write them, how we write an async migration, that would change here. So if we were to change this one, which we don't have to, but we are going to for this, we don't return anything, and we just have async throws. So this is just changed to try await. So this does have a return in front of it, but because this is really a one-line function, we don't need the return. Oops. So we have try await, and then this is creating our database, and then again right here, we don't return anything, but it's an async function. And we just need to, again, just type try await, because how it works is still the exact same. It's just using the different syntax. So we are not going to test this because the migration has already run, so we don't really run it again in the way to test. If we wanted to test that this migration that we have already written works, we could just delete the Docker container and create a new one. Or you could just create new migrations and use the new syntax instead. But this is how you would upgrade your migration syntax. And that's it. That's all the changes that we need to make to convert our current project from the event loop future syntax to Swift's new async await syntax for the new concurrency features that we have. We changed the package.swift file to use the new version of Vapor and upgraded all the packages in the project. And we updated the song controller to use the new async await syntax for all of the different endpoints that we have. And then lastly, we updated the migration to use the new async migration. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.